I didn't cry. I just stopped breathing. My name is Sarah. And today I sat in a hospital holding his hand. The man I loved. The man I trusted. The man I believed was mine. But his eyes weren't with me. They were staring into another room. In that room, another woman was giving birth. He was carrying his child. No one screamed. No one cried. It was so quiet I could hear time moving. My heart beat steadily like a clock with just minutes left until midnight. I sat beside him. Too close to walk away. Too far to belong. I looked at his hand in mine. He didn't pull it away. But he didn't hold it either. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't love. It was silence. The silence between us had grown so loud, it drowned out everything else. Outside the rain had started. Hospital lights flickered. Somewhere in the hallway someone was crying, but it wasn't me. I felt like a stone. One lying underwater, wet on the outside, cold and dry inside. How did we get here? A year ago. It was different. But that's a story for later. Right now I just sat there. No words. No questions. No strength to stand up. And then for the first time I thought, maybe this is how love ends. Not with shouting or broken dishes or slammed doors. But quietly. Like smoke after a candle goes out. He turned his head. Looked at me. His eyes were full of tears. "Thank you for being here," he whispered. I nodded. I didn't answer. Because what do you say to someone who broke you, and never noticed? He held my hand, while she gave birth to his child. And I will never forget that. We met in a bookstore. It wasn't some romantic cliché. It was an ordinary kind of miracle. I was just looking for a book. He was hiding from the rain. I remember how he stood by the new arrival's shelf. All dressed in dark. One hand in his pocket. A trace of stubble on his face. His eyes weren't really focused. Like his body was in the bookstore but his mind was somewhere far away. I stepped closer. Accidentally reached for the same book. Our fingers touched. "Sorry," I said. "This one's yours," he replied with a small smile. And I felt something. Not butterflies. Not a spark. But silence. That soft kind of silence. Like a warm blanket in the early morning when it's still dark outside. "Do you read drama?" he asked. "I try to survive it. Books are just practice," I answered. He smiled. A real one this time. We walked out together. The rain was still falling gently and I slipped under his umbrella. We crossed the street to a small cafe. It smelled like fresh pastries and old wood. It smelled like coffee and quiet. That's exactly what the beginning smells like. He didn't talk much. But when he did, I listened. His voice was calm. No arrogance. No effort. Like he wasn't trying to impress me. And maybe that's what made it interesting. I told him I loved books because they're honest. Because in books, people don't run away when things get hard. He was silent for a moment, then said softly, "I run too. I just don't always know where to." I didn't know his story yet. Didn't know what was coming. But that night I already didn't want to let him go. We laughed. We looked at each other longer than people usually do. And when he walked me home, he didn't hold my hand. He just walked beside me. And that was enough. After that evening, I often remembered the way his silhouette looked in the cafe window light. And how he held the door open for me. As if the world itself had opened a brand new chapter. We weren't in a hurry. Our relationship unfolded like an old film, frame by frame, slowly but genuinely. I would come to his place in the evenings. We'd sit on the porch, drink tea or wine, and listen to the sound of cicadas. He rarely talked about himself, but I felt a quiet agreement inside me not to ask, not to push, not to break something that had just started to bloom. We were simply near each other, and that was enough. There was one evening when we just lay there in silence. He was on one end of the couch, I was on the other. And then he suddenly said, "You know, I can't remember the last time I felt this calm." I smiled. Because we're not pretending. We just are. And that was the truth. His eyes lingered on me longer than usual. I felt something begin to bloom inside me. Not desire. Not anxiety. But tenderness. Soft, strong, like a quiet spring flood. There were touches. Shy ones. His hand brushed against mine like it was the first time. As if it was asking permission. I wanted to scream from how real it felt. But I stayed silent. Because that silence wasn't about distance. It was the silence where we existed together. He made me breakfast. Once. Then again. And again. I never asked, he just did it. As if he knew I'd always done everything on my own. No. I didn't have to. Sometimes he would sit by the window for a long time. With a cup of coffee. His eyes held something old. Something that wouldn't let him be fully present. But I didn't ask. I would just sit next to him. And lay my head on his shoulder. This lasted for months. I was learning to trust. He was learning to speak a little more. I started leaving small things at his place. A toothbrush. A bottle of my perfume. A book I hadn't finished. Felt like leaving bookmarks. In our shared days. And one day he said, "I'm not ready to talk about everything. But I want you to know, I'm not pretending here." I nodded. Because my heart already knew. It knew we weren't an accident. That he wasn't just a chapter. He might be the whole story. It was a warm night. August. The air smelled like ripe peaches. And something inevitable. We were sitting on his porch. I held a cup of tea in my hands. He was silent. But this silence wasn't the same as before. It was heavier. "I need to tell you something," he said softly. I froze. My spoon slipped into the cup. The sound felt louder than my heartbeat. "I was married," he said. "And she's pregnant." I didn't say anything. Just stared into the dark. "We're not together anymore. Haven't been for a while. This happened. We saw each other again for a few weeks. I was lost. Then I disappeared. And when I found out, she was already 2 months along. My skin suddenly felt cold. As if my body understood what my heart hadn't yet processed. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I whispered. He looked at me. His eyes were honest. No walls. No lies. "I was afraid you'd leave. And I've never wanted someone to stay the way I want you to." I stayed silent. There was no screaming. No drama. Just a quiet realization. My heart had just begun to open. And now it had to choose whether to close again. I stayed. I don't know why. Maybe because I saw something more in him. Maybe because no one had ever been that honest with me before. Or maybe because I already loved him. We didn't talk for the rest of the night. We just lay in bed. No words. No touching. Each of us on our own side. And still, together. The next few days felt like a fog. I worked. I spoke. I smiled. But deep inside, something kept checking every emotion. Is this real? Or is this just fear of being alone? I didn't know. But when he showed up, I still wanted to see him smile. To watch how he touched his hair. To drink the coffee he made me. Love doesn't always begin before the confessions. But real love doesn't end after them. Can't you see he's not choosing you? Those words hit like a quiet punch. Not out of cruelty, but out of care. They were spoken by Mia, my childhood friend, the one who usually stayed silent when I fell for the wrong men. But not this time. We were sitting in a small cafe, the kind we always went to, ordering the same sandwiches. It was calm like always. But inside me everything tensed. "I'm not asking you to love him," I said, trying to stay calm. "I just want you to understand." Mia looked at me the way only someone who loves you can. Like she already sees the ending you're walking toward but knows she can't stop you. "I understand you," she said. "But I don't understand why you're staying in this story. Are you his peace? His emotional safety net? His backup plan?" I looked away, because some part of me already knew. "But he didn't lie to me," I said. "He told me the truth. That matters." Mia reached across the table and gently held my hand. "Truth is good," she said. "But love is a choice. One that's made every day. And what has he chosen, Sarah?" The sandwiches grew cold. The coffee lost its warmth. And her words stayed with me, louder than anything. She added softly, "I just don't want to see you disappear again. Like before. Remember that guy in Los Angeles?" I gave a small, sad smile. Yes, I remembered. Back then I lost myself for 3 years. This time it had only been a few months. But the intensity was the same. Mia left with a kiss on my temple. And I stayed there looking out the window, watching strangers pass by, wondering how many of them had never been someone's first choice, and just kept quiet about it. That evening I didn't text him. I went to bed early. No messages. No waiting. I just fell asleep. And in my dream I was swimming alone in a river. Calmly, unafraid. Without a hand to hold. Without the fear of sinking. He disappeared. No arguments. No goodbye. Just silence. At first I tried to be rational. Maybe his phone died. Maybe work got in the way. Maybe something urgent came up. But days passed. And the silence grew louder. It expanded, filled every corner of me. I wrote messages I never sent. I woke up thinking, today he'll call. Today he'll explain. But he never did. It felt like opening the fridge in the middle of the night, hoping something had magically appeared. But every time, empty. I stopped eating. Not because I wanted to, but because food had no taste. Time had no weight. Everything blurred into stillness. I sat on the bathroom floor. Wrapped my arms around myself, stared at the ceiling, listened for some kind of sign, a knock, a vibration, anything. Mia texted again, asking how I was. I wrote back, "I'm fine," because anything else would have hurt too much to admit. I started talking to myself, out loud, just to make sure I still existed, just to hear a voice. "Sarah, you're strong," I whispered. "You've been through worse. You'll get through this too. But strength isn't armor. It's not the absence of pain. It's the way a wound keeps bleeding even when you've learned to hide it well." Weeks passed. I didn't know where he was. If he even thought about me. If he remembered the color of my eyes or the way I laughed when I forgot to be cautious. The city grew colder. I pulled his sweater from my drawer, the one he left behind. I wrapped myself in it and closed my eyes. And I imagined us in that cafe again, laughing, drinking coffee, him smiling without walls between us. But it wasn't real. There was only silence, and me inside it. So I didn't break. I didn't call, didn't beg, didn't ask, Why? Because by then I had learned. When someone disappears, that's an answer too. The call came at 8 in the morning. I had just woken up. My hair was messy, my feet bare against the cold floor. I looked at the screen. His name. 7 letters I had tried to forget. But my heart recognized them instantly. I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen. 15 seconds. 15 heartbeats. Silence. Then a message. Please call me. It's important. I didn't want to. I had nothing left to say. But my fingers dialed him anyway. Sarah. His voice was rough, like it hadn't been used in days. I'm sorry I disappeared. I couldn't explain. She's in labor. She texted me an hour ago. I don't know what to do. But I need you to come with me. I stood in the kitchen. One sock on. The kettle was boiling. The world didn't pause. But I did. Hey, I said. And I didn't know why. An hour later we were driving. I sat in the passenger seat. The road blurred past the window. Everything looked the same except me. He didn't say much. Just played old songs from a playlist we'd made together. The ones we used to sing along to in early spring when love still felt safe. I looked at him. His jaw was tight. Hands gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping him steady. Thank you for coming, he said. I nodded. That was all. I didn't ask about her. Didn't ask about the baby. Didn't ask about where I fit in. Because deep down I already knew. We arrived. I followed him through glass doors and white corridors. We didn't hold hands. We didn't speak. Just before he stepped into the delivery room, he looked back at me. I smiled. And I meant it. I was there. Not because I had to be, but because some part of me still loved him enough to see this through. Maybe because I needed to know once and for all whether I could finally let him go. The hospital greeted us with bright lights and the sterile smell of endings. The tile was cold beneath our feet. The hallway narrow. Too quiet. He held my hand. Firmly. Like he was afraid he'd collapse if he let go. And I held his. Automatically. The way you hold someone you love, even when your heart has already cracked. He was in the next room. I had never seen her. Didn't know her name. I only knew one thing: she was giving birth to his child. I sat in the waiting room. Watched his profile. Watched his eyes drift toward the door again and again. They weren't with me. She's scared to go through this alone, he said. She's never been strong. But she's a good person. I didn't answer. I didn't want to hear about her. But I also couldn't say anything else. He stood up. Squeezed my hand just once. Then let go. I need to be there, he said. I nodded. I smiled. Maybe even genuinely. Because I understood something in that moment. I wasn't his enemy. But I also wasn't his choice. I was the in-between. The soft place to land. His silence. His shelter. But not his home. I stood and walked to the window. Outside it was still raining. The same kind of rain from the day we met. But this time I wasn't waiting for a sign. I pressed my fingers to the glass. Traced a circle on the cold surface. And suddenly remembered being a little girl. Waiting at the window for a father who never came. And I realized something even deeper. I've always waited. Waited to be enough. Waited to be chosen. Waited for someone to stay. But now I was done waiting. I picked up my coat. Walked down the hallway. No one stopped me. No one noticed. And I left. Not because he was a bad person. Not because I was angry. But because for the first time in my life, I chose myself. The rain didn't stop. I walked slowly across the parking lot. My coat was soaked through. My hair clung to my cheeks. My shoes made that soft, wet sound with every step. But I didn't stop. The rain wasn't just falling. It was washing something off of me. Washing off hope. Washing off illusion. Washing off the quiet ache of always being second. I walked. And I didn't care who saw me. Because finally I was done shrinking myself into spaces that never belonged to me. I took the subway. Sat on a bench. And for the first time in weeks I didn't feel pain. Just exhaustion. Not the kind that sleep could fix. The kind that lives deep in your bones after carrying too much for too long. My phone was silent. And I had turned it off. Not to be dramatic. But because I needed to hear myself again. I came home. Took off the wet clothes. Lit a candle. Made myself tea. Not for anyone else. Just for me. I sat by the window. Watched the rain trace lines on the glass. And for the first time I didn't search for signs. Didn't ask what it meant. Didn't wonder if he was thinking about me. I remembered what Mia had said. Can't you see he's not choosing you? Well, I could. And strangely it didn't hurt anymore. Because I was finally choosing myself. I went to bed early. No messages. No waiting. No checking the time. And that night I didn't dream of him. I didn't replay the hospital. There were no hands. No eyes. No goodbye. Just quiet. And that was the clearest sign of all. Something inside me had finally healed. A month later. Night. I woke up from a dream. In it he was holding my hand again. Just like in the hospital. But this time, he was looking at me. Not through me. Not past me. At me. I woke up with tears on my cheeks. But they didn't sting. They didn't hurt. They felt like rain after a long drought. Soft. Cleansing. I got up. Lit a lamp. Walked to the kitchen. Poured a glass of water. And in that moment, I realized I could finally breathe. Not because everything made sense, but because I no longer needed it to. I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't hoping he'd come back. I wasn't measuring my worth by someone else's confusion. I lived. I met up with Mia. I laughed. I read new books. Bought a new coffee cup just because I liked the color. Not for someone else. For me. I wasn't looking for new love. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it either. I knew that when love comes again, I won't beg for a place in someone's life. I'll either be chosen, or I'll walk away. One evening I passed the same bookstore where we met. I didn't avoid looking through the glass. I even smiled. Somewhere in that store was the version of me who still believed that this time would be different. And I didn't blame her. He had hope. And hope is the bravest thing a heart can do. I don't know where he is now. If he's happy. If he ever thinks about me. But it doesn't matter anymore. Because I've come back to myself. Not perfect. But whole. Love doesn't always stay. But it always teaches. And I know now. Sometimes the strongest love is the one you let go. The end. But not the end. This story is one of many. But it touches those who were not the first choice at least once. I found strength in not waiting anymore.